case number IT0484-D, the prosecutor versus Ramush Haradinajt, Idriz Balaj, and Lahi Brahimaj.
Thank you very much, Mr. Registrar. Could we have appearances, please, for the day starting with the prosecution?
Good morning, Your Honours. Paul Rogers for the prosecution, together with Ms. Daniela Kravitz, Aditya Menon, and Priya Gopalan, and our case manager today, Ms. Alina Pedersen.
And for the defense, for Mr. Haradinaj.
Good morning, Your Honours. Ben Emerson for Ramush Haradinajt, together with Rob Dixon, Andrew Strong, Annie O'Reilly, and Kerry Rowan.
And for Mr. Balaj.
Good morning, Your Honors. Chad Mayer, Chenchin Zaberi, Colin Rohan, and I'm Gregor Guy Smith on behalf of Idriz Balaj.
For Mr. Brahimaj.
Good morning, Your Honours. Richard Harvey with Paul Troop, with Rudina Yassini, and with Sophie Rigney for Mr. Brahimaj.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harvey. This chamber is sitting today to deliver judgment in the trial of the three accused persons, Ramush Haradinajt, Idriz Balaj, and Lahi Brahimaj. For the purposes of this hearing, the chamber will summarize briefly its findings, emphasizing that this is a summary only, and that the only authoritative account of the chamber's findings and its reasons for those findings is to be found in the written judgment, copies of which will be made available to the parties at the conclusion of this sitting. The three accused, Ramush Haradinajt, Idriz Balaj, and Lahi Brahimaj, are charged as members of a joint criminal enterprise, or alternatively, under other modes of individual criminal responsibility, with crimes allegedly committed by them or by other members of the Kosovo Liberation Army in 1998 against Kosovo Serbs, Kosovo Roma/Egyptian people, Kosovo Albanian or other civilians in a compound of the Kosovo Liberation Army in the village of Jablanica in Jagovica municipality, Western Kosovo. I will refer from now on to the Kosovo Liberation Army as the KLA. The indictment alleges specific incidents of abduction of a total of 16 Kosovo Albanians, Kosovo Serbs, Kosovo Roma, or other civilians, who, it is alleged, were detained and subjected to torture and cruel treatment at the KLA compound in Jablanica. It is further alleged that 8 of these individuals were killed while in KLA custody. These allegations form the basis of 6 counts of violations of the laws or customs of war, namely cruel treatment, torture, and murder, charged under Article 3 of the statute against Ramush Haradinajt and Idriz Balaj. Lahi Brahimaj is charged with 4 of these counts. This case is a partial retrial. The 3 accused were charged initially in the case of Prosecutor versus Haradinajt et al., case number IT0484, on the 4th of March 2005, with 16 counts of crimes against humanity and 19 counts of violations of the laws or customs of war. Ramush Haradinajt was also charged with 1 further count of crimes against humanity and 1 further count of violations of the laws or customs of war. On the 3rd of April 2008, the trial chamber acquitted Ramush Haradinajt and Idriz Balaj of all charges in the indictment, found Lahi Brahimaj guilty of 2 counts, sentenced him to 6 years imprisonment, and acquitted him of all other charges. The prosecution appealed the trial judgment alleging inter alia that the trial chamber breached its right to a fair trial by not allowing it additional time to secure the evidence of 2 critical witnesses and asked for a retrial. On the 21st of July 2010, the appeals chamber, Judge Robinson dissenting, granted in part the prosecution's appeal and quashed the trial chamber's decisions to acquit the accused of certain counts in the indictment related to crimes alleged to have been committed at the KLA compound in Yablanica. The appeals chamber ordered a partial retrial with respect to these counts. The trial commenced on the 18th of August 2011. The chamber received evidence from 56 witnesses, including the 2 witnesses with respect to whom the retrial was ordered. The present indictment alleges that at the material time, Ramush Haradinajt was a commander of the KLA Dugajin operational zone in western Kosovo, and that as such, he had overall command of the KLA forces in this area. Idriz Balaj is alleged to have been a member of the KLA, a direct subordinate to Ramush Haradinajt, and the commander of a rapid intervention special unit known as the Black Eagles. Lahi Brahimaj is alleged to have been a member of the KLA stationed at Yablanica throughout the indictment period and a subordinate to Ramush Haradinajt. Lahi Brahimaj is alleged to have served briefly as deputy commander of the Dugajin operational zone and subsequently as the finance director of the KLA General Staff. With respect to the 6 counts of violations of the laws or customs of war charged in the indictment, the chamber made the following findings. Now I start with count 3. On the 13th of June 1998, witness 6, a Catholic Kosovo Albanian, was abducted by KLA soldiers from the road between Jagovica and Klina. He was detained in the KLA compound in Yablanica for approximately 6 weeks, where he was subjected to repeated beatings by KLA soldiers, including Nazmi Brahimaj, Lahi Brahimaj, and Hamza Brahimaj. Witness 6 was accused of consorting with Serbs and spying. On the 25th of July 1998, witness 6 was released from the KLA compound in Yablanica by Nazmi Brahimaj. The chamber is satisfied that the charges of torture and cruel treatment of witness 6 are established. This count is not charged against Lahi Brahimaj in this retrial. Count 4, again on the 13th of June 1998, Nenad Remishta, a traffic policeman of Serb ethnicity, was removed from his vehicle by KLA soldiers on the road between Klina and Jagovica. He was taken to the KLA compound in Yablanica. There he was severely beaten by Nazmi Brahimaj and other KLA soldiers. On the following day, the 14th of June 1998, Nenad Remishta was removed from the room in the KLA compound in Yablanica, where he was detained and never seen again. He is still unaccounted for. The chamber is satisfied that the allegations of torture and cruel treatment of Nenad Remishta are established. The prosecution presented no evidence about what happened to Nenad Remishta following his removal from a room in the KLA compound in Yablanica. The chamber concludes in the circumstances that the murder of Nenad Remishta is not established. Towards the end of June 1998, 1 unknown Bosnian man and 3 unknown Montenegrin men were brought to the KLA compound in Jablanica, where they were beaten and stabbed with knives by KLA soldiers in the presence of Nazmi Brahimaj and Hamza Brahimaj. The unknown Bosnian man was accused of interrupting electricity. The chamber is satisfied that the allegations of cruel treatment of these 4 men and the charge of torture of the unknown Bosnian man are established. In the absence of evidence that the mistreatment of the 3 unknown Montenegrin men was carried out with the requisite intent for torture, the chamber concludes that the charge of torture of the 3 Montenegrin men is not established. Count 5. On approximately the 13th or 14th July 1998, Skender Kuci, a Kosovo Albanian, was brought to the KLA compound in Jablanica in the boot of his car and was detained in a room in the KLA compound. He was beaten on his arrival in the courtyard and in the room where he was detained by KLA soldiers, including Nazmi Brahimaj and Hamza Brahimaj, in the presence of Lahi Brahimaj. On the following day, that is approximately 14th or 15th of July 1998, Per Krasniki, a Catholic Kosovo Albanian who had left his home in Peć on the 10th of July 1998 with the intention of joining the KLA, was brought to the KLA compound in Jablanica. He was detained in the same room as Skender Kuci. A few hours later, witness 3, a Kosovo Albanian, was brought by Lahi Brahimaj to the KLA compound in Jablanica and was detained in the room with Skender Kuci and Per Krasniki. The 3 men were subjected to repeated beatings in the KLA compound. In Jablanica, a witness described the state Skender Kuci and Per Krasniki were in as a result of the beatings like this, and I quote, "I never saw anyone in a worse condition. I have seen people dead, killed during the war, but people reduced to that plight I had never seen before, in a very, very bad condition," unquote. During the beatings, Per Krasniki was accused of being a spy and Skender Kuci of having a lot of money. Witness 3 was interrogated by Lahi Brahimaj, following which Lahi Brahimaj asked 2 women to practice beating with batons on witness 3. The chamber is satisfied that the allegations of torture and cruel treatment with respect to Skender Kuci, Per Krasniki, and witness 3 are established. This count is again also not charged against Lahi Brahimaj in the retrial. On approximately the 15th or 16th of July 1998, the day of his failed attempt to escape from the KLA compound in Jablanica, Skender Kuci was beaten severely, following which he was brought to a hospital where he died. The chamber is satisfied that the death of Skender Kuci was caused by complications of the injuries inflicted on him during the beatings in the KLA compound in Jablanica. The charge of murder of Skender Kuci is established. Per Krasniki was subjected to severe and repeated beatings in the KLA compound in Jablanica. He was last seen by witness 6 at the KLA compound in Jablanica on the 25th of July 1998. His body was discovered in September 1998 at the Lake Radonjic Canal with gunshot injuries to the head trunk, and upper limbs. The prosecution has presented no evidence as to the circumstances in which he died. In the circumstances, the chamber cannot conclude beyond reasonable doubt that the charge of murder of Pelkrashniki is established. Count 6. On a day after the attack by the Serbian forces on the village of Grabanica, on or about the 19th of May 1998, Nasa Lika and Fadil Fazlu were removed by force by KLA soldiers from a house in Jabal. During the incident, the KLA soldiers called Fadil Fazlu and Nasa Lika traitors. The KLA soldiers beat and kicked Nasa Lika and Fadil Fazlu in Jabal. The chamber is satisfied that the allegations of torture and cruel treatment of Nasa Lika and Fadil Fazlu with respect to their forceful removal from Jabal are established. The chamber therefore is satisfied that counts 3, 4, 5, and the forceful removal of Nasa Lika and Fadil Fazlu from Jabal by KLA soldiers alleged in count 6 are established. Turning to count 1 of the indictment, alleges the murder, cruel treatment, and torture of Ivan Jaric, a Kosovo Serb, and Agron Berisha and Burim Beta, both of Kosovo Roma origin. The evidence establishes that the 3 men left the village of Dolat on the 17th or 18th of May 1998 on a horse-drawn cart in the direction of the mill in the village of Grabanica, where they were going to grind a sack of corn. They arrived in Grabanica the same day. The 3 men were never seen by their relatives after that day. The prosecution offered 2 witnesses to prove events that it alleges occurred after Ivan Jaric, Agron Berisha, and Burim Beta were last seen by their relatives. One of these witnesses gave evidence suggesting that the 3 men were mistreated in the KLA compound in Jablanica and killed, and that the 3 accused were involved in the mistreatment and killing. The other witness gave evidence suggesting that Idriz Balaj and Lahi Brahimaj were involved in the mistreatment, including of the 3 victims. The first witness changed his account a number of times in material respects. He contradicted himself repeatedly, and his evidence was contradicted by other evidence in the proceedings. The evidence of the second witness was characterized by significant inconsistencies and contradictions. The chamber was not satisfied of the reliability of the evidence of either of these 2 witnesses. For reasons fully set out in the written judgment, the chamber finds that count 1 is not established. Count 2 alleges the murder and cruel treatment of 2 Roma/Egyptian men, Uke Rajapai and his son-in-law Nesrat Aliyai, from the village of Grabanica. The evidence establishes that on the 20th of May 1998, Uke Rajapai and Nesrat Aliyai were stopped on the road between Grabanica and Dolovo by men dressed in dark green camouflage clothing who were speaking Albanian. These men tied the hands of Uke Rajapai and Nesrat Aliyai, blindfolded them, and threw them into a car which left in an unknown direction. The prosecution presented no direct evidence as to what happened to Uke Rajapai and Nesrat Aliyai after they were abducted from the road between Grabanica and Dolovo. It seeks to rely on the evidence of a witness in another trial whose evidence on this issue was not subjected to cross-examination, referring to a son-in-law and a father-in-law of Roma origin, whose identity is not known, being present in the KLA of the compound in Jablanica. Again, for reasons fully set out in the written judgment, the Chamber finds that count 2 is not established. Count 6 contains further allegations of mistreatment of Nasser Lika, a Kosovo Albanian, in the KLA compound in Jablanica. The prosecution called one witness in support of this charge. This was one of the 2 witnesses it offered in support of count 1. The Chamber was not satisfied that this witness was a reliable witness. In particular, the Chamber was not persuaded that the witness was indeed present in the KLA compound in Jablanica at the material time, and that he actually observed the events he testified about. The Chamber was left with a clear impression that this witness may have retold what he might have heard from others. For reasons again fully set out in the written judgment, the Chamber finds that the allegations of torture and cruel treatment of Nasser Lika in the KLA compound in Jablanica contained in count 6 are not established. A central allegation in the present indictment is the existence of a joint criminal enterprise, to which I'll refer as JCE, the alleged common purpose of which was to consolidate the total control of the KLA over the Dugajin operational zone by the unlawful removal and mistreatment of Kosovo civilians and by the mistreatment of Kosovo Albanian and Kosovo Roma Egyptian civilians and other civilians who were or were perceived to have been collaborators with the Serbian forces or otherwise not supporting the KLA. This JCE is alleged to have existed from on or about March 1998 until at least late September 1998. The prosecution presented no direct evidence to prove that the established crimes were committed as part of a JCE in which the 3 accused participated. The Chamber considered circumstantial evidence tendered by the prosecution to prove this allegation. This evidence includes communiques of the KLA General Staff published in the media, which contain information about attacks or quote-unquote measures undertaken by the KLA against collaborators with the Serbian authorities. The Chamber finds that the information contained in the communiques may have been exaggerated or altered for propaganda purposes. This information was often vague and lacked details as to the time and place of the incident, the identity of the perpetrator, the identity of the victims, or their civilian or military status. Further, the Chamber received evidence relating to the existence of various lists of names which the prosecution submits were, quote, KLA blacklists of individuals who were suspected of being disloyal to the KLA, sympathizing with the opposition LDK, or having worked for the Serbian authorities, unquote. In evidence is only one such list, in handwritten notes of a meeting with the heading, quote, wanted stroke or missing persons, unquote, whose purpose is not established by the evidence. In the Chamber's conclusion, the evidence tendered with respect to these lists does not support a finding that a JCE existed with a common criminal purpose as alleged in the indictment. KLA military police regulations provide, in relevant part, that the KLA military police had the task of, quote, investigating and uncovering all those persons who collaborate in any way with the enemy, unquote. And, again, I quote, taking of measures against all those working against the Kosovo Liberation Army, unquote. considering evidence about activities of the KLA military police on the ground, the Chamber concluded that these regulations do not support the existence of the JCE. Apart from the incidents at the KLA compound in Jablanica, the Chamber found the following incidents of mistreatment of civilians in the territory of the Dugajin operational zone by KLA soldiers were established. The mistreatment of Mijat Stojanovic, Dragoslav Stojanovic, and Vasilin Stijovic on the 18th of April 1998 in the Stojanovic family compound and in Ismail Haradinaj's house in Dlojan by KLA soldiers including Zakir Nimonai, Daud Haradinaj, and Besnik Haradinaj. The mistreatment of Novak Stijovic and Stanislav Radosevic on the 22nd of April 1998 by KLA soldiers in Dlojan, and the beating of the Albanian interpreter of an ECMM team in Dlojan by Idriz Balaj on the 11th of August 1998. Considering the specific circumstances in each of these incidents, and in particular, events preceding and following the mistreatment and the release of the victims shortly thereafter, the Chamber finds that none of these incidents is indicative of a pattern or a plan involving the mistreatment of civilians as alleged in the indictment. For example, after one of these incidents, a KLA soldier apologized to the victims and attributed the incident to uncontrollable extremist groups within the KLA. The Chamber found that Yab Shati, witness 6, Nenad Remishta, 1 unknown Bosnian man, 3 unknown Montenegrin men, Paul Krasniki, Skenda Kuchi, and witness 3 were detained in the KLA compound in Jablanica, where they were subjected to repeated beatings by KLA soldiers. The Chamber found that the perpetrators of these beatings, except for Jabu Shati, included Nazmi Brahimaj, Hamza Brahimaj, Nasa Brahimaj, and Lahi Brahimaj. The victims, except for Jabu Shati and the 3 Montenegrin men, were accused of spying or of consorting with Serbs or were associated with the Serbian forces. These findings of the Chamber tend to suggest that a common plan may have existed between Nazmi Brahimaj, Hamza Brahimaj, Nasa Brahimaj, Lahi Brahimaj, and other KLA soldiers present in the KLA compound in Jablanica to detain and mistreat individuals whom they believed were collaborating with the Serbian forces or were not supporting the KLA. Such common plan is not alleged in the present indictment, and the issue is outside the scope of these proceedings. The Chamber notes, however, that even if the existence of such a common plan were established, which is not the finding of the Chamber, there is nothing in the evidence to indicate that Ramush Haradinajt or Idriz Balaj may have been involved in any such common plan. On the contrary, the evidence establishes that when Ramush Haradinajt found out about the detention and mistreatment of Skenda Kuchi, he went to Jablanica to speak to Nazmi Brahimaj regarding Skenda Kuchi's release, telling him that, quote, no such thing should happen anymore because this is damaging our cause, unquote. When witness 3 was brought to Ramush Haradinajt after his escape from Jablanica and subsequent apprehension by Lahi Brahimaj, Ramush Haradinajt offered him food and accommodation and released him to his family. No credible evidence has been presented by the prosecution to establish that Ramush Haradinajt was even aware of the victim of aware of the crimes committed at the KLA compound in Jablanica. On the evidence accepted by the chamber, there is no mention of Idriz Balaj being present in the KLA compound in Jablanica or having knowledge of these crimes. Having considered all the circumstantial evidence offered to prove the existence of the JCE alleged in the indictment, the chamber finds that the common purpose of the JCE is not established. Ramush Haradinajt and Idriz Balaj, therefore, are not criminally responsible for participating in a JCE in relation to the crimes charged in the indictment under counts 3, 4, 5, and 6. Lahi Brahimaj is criminally responsible for participating in a JCE in relation to crimes charged under counts 4 and 6. I'm sorry, I said is responsible. I said should read Lahi Brahimaj. I do that again. Lahi Brahimaj is not criminally responsible for participating in a JCE in relation to the crimes charged under counts 4 and 6. Ramush Haradinajt is charged in the alternative with ordering, instigating, or aiding and abetting the crimes charged in count 6. The chamber found that the crimes alleged under this count were not established, except for the forceful removal of Nasser Lig and Fadil Fazlu from Jabal by KLA soldiers. There is no evidence that suggests, let alone proof beyond a reasonable doubt, that Ramush Haradinajt prompted or instructed the KLA soldiers who forcefully removed Nasser Lig and Fadil Fazlu from Jabal to commit these acts, or that he aided and abetted this crime. Idriz Balaj and Lahi Brahimaj are charged in the alternative with committing, planning, or aiding and abetting the commission of crimes charged in count 6. The chamber found that the alleged crimes charged under this count were not established, except for the forceful removal of Nasser Lig and Fadil Fazlu from Jabal by KLA soldiers. The prosecution provided no evidence to support the allegations that Idriz Balaj and Lahi Brahimaj committed, planned, or aided and abetted the commission of this crime. Therefore, Idriz Balaj and Lahi Brahimaj are not criminally responsible in any respect for the crimes charged under 6, including the modes of liability charged in the alternative. Mr. Haradinajt, will you please stand up? The chamber finds you not guilty on all counts in the indictment. The chamber orders that you be released from the United Nations Detention Unit, subject to the completion of the necessary formalities, unless you are detained there pursuant to any other valid order of detention. You may be seated. Mr. Balaj, will you please stand up? The chamber finds you not guilty on all counts in the indictment. The chamber orders that you be released from the United Nations Detention Unit, subject to the completion of the necessary formalities, unless you are detained there pursuant to any other valid order of detention. You may be seated. Mr. Brahimaj. Mr. Brahimaj, the chamber finds you not guilty on all counts in the indictment charged against you. The chamber orders that you be released from the United Nations Detention Unit, subject to the completion of the necessary formalities, unless you are detained there pursuant to any other valid order of detention. You may be seated. This concludes this trial. The chamber will now adjourn.
All rise. We will